Welcome to the BetterPears podcast. Join Dr. Jason Fujikawa for his insights on theology, philosophy, culture, and the verbal expressions we use to relate meaning and reality to one another. Make no mistake, this is a podcast for nerds, but particular nerds who are searching for old wisdom made ever new. To learn more about the BetterPears cultural empire, please visit BetterPears.com.
Episode 7 of the BetterPears podcast examines the word Genesis, and by extension, genealogy. The genealogist in my family was my late Uncle Barry Behrman, who passed from this life on September 19th, 2021, surrounded by his loving family. In my process of grief, I wrote the following memorial, which now follows as this episode's dedication. In Memoriam. The news of my uncle's death reached me this evening. I had been following the details of his decline in health these last few days, and was driven to pray for him earlier today when my older sons asked me to play an audio recording of the final chapters of Don Quixote, those which include the account of Quixote's death and the epitaph written by Samson Carrasco. A doughty gentleman lies here, a stranger all his life to fear. Nor in his death could death prevail, in that last hour to make him quail. He for the world but little cared, and at his feats the world was scared. A crazy man his life he passed, but in his senses died at last. I know not what lucidity met my uncle in his last moments in this life, but I do know that he did live his life as a crazy man in an insane world. That is to say, as a sane man among learned fools. There is one moment in my youth in Green Hills, Ohio, and my time spent at our parish, Our Lady of the Rosary, which has been wedded to my memory of Uncle Barry so many years ago. It was the spring of 2000, and I was weeks away from my high school graduation. As if by chance and God's cosmic scheduling of divine appointments, Uncle Barry and I found ourselves in the parish parking lot one evening, after our separate meetings. He was perhaps there for choir practice, me for scouts or youth group. In any case, I was wearing a shirt emblazoned with the word Harvard across the chest. Now, I had already determined that I was to attend Fordham University in the fall, and not Harvard University, which, by the grace of God, had rejected my application. Upon his inquiry into the meaning of my shirt selection and my response to the contrary, concerning the purpose of his inquiry, namely that I was to attend the Jesuit University of New York City instead of Harvard, Uncle Barry allowed for a pause in our conversation as we looked out over the auburn sunset draping the parking lot. He then rejoined, "You know, some of those professors out east have some crazy ideas." I confirmed that I knew this to be the case, and life resumed its regular cadence. We parted ways. I graduated high school and shipped off to New York City that fall. I do not know by what extraordinary means my guardian angel protected me from the multifarious opportunities to deny Christ, his church, and the moral law that I knew to be true, even if I failed to live up to it in practice. I do know that Uncle Barry's comment stuck with me through those tough times, after the world changed the day the New York skyline changed, and when the old rule book for war, for civil liberties, for sexual orientation, and for sexual identity were getting tossed aside. These non-assuming words from this humble man, on a day long past, played their part in conserving my Catholicism and guarding my intellect. G.K. Chesterton once wrote something to the effect that a conservative is simply someone who does not think his father a fool. Well, my father is not a fool, and my Uncle Barry is not a fool. At least, I would be in good company. Instead of foolishness, there was something quite genuine and authentic about Barry's life. He was paternal without being patronizing. He was gregarious only because he was pastoral. He was a company man for General Electric back in the days when there was such a thing as a company man, who could put in his time each day and his years each decade toward a pension and actually retire with enough years left to focus more intentionally on his family and his apostolic works, such as his prayer chain ministry with the parish. I believe he used those years well, better than most of his generation did, and likely better than my generation will. Let us just take his 25 years coordinating his parish prayer chain ministry. If you were ever on the prayer chain, search your email account for Prayer Warrior and consider for a moment all the intercessions that occurred. How many minds and hearts were turned to heaven to implore God's love and mercy upon a fallen world, in part because this ordinary man, who outside his family and friends will fade in the sight of this age as a mere pandemic statistic, this man burned in his heart with the fire of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. How can we resist now to urge to fall to our knees and implore through our tears the heavenly court to remove whatever impediments might exist for this man, keeping him from at last receiving the only rest for which his restless heart was made? I pray not only that he may rest now in God's peace, but I also look forward to Barry's rising, again in health, in mind, and in his glory. Episode 7. Genesis. Genesis, whether the first book of the Bible, the first of the 5 books of Moses, a video gaming console in the late 1980s, or a collaborative English rock band featuring Phil Collins, Genesis means, we are told by the likes of Big Lexi, a beginning. Does this meaning satisfy us? At the very starting line of our journey through the good book, we are treated with lexicographical kid gloves that imitate the sterilized, abstracted Anglophonic world of the 21st century, where we are either horrified that our food once had a face, or are completely oblivious to the myoidal origin of a hamburger patty. As an insightful Benedictine monk with a background in biology once remarked to me, if you want to eat, something, either a plant or animal, must die. Although the word Genesis is more concerned with human gestation than digestion, a helpful key to its meaning can be found in, of all things, pasta, or rather the names given to pasta. It is difficult to assign a thematic thread to the Italian system of naming pasta. The best sub-theme that I have postulated it to date enjoins those pastas connected to the theme of debt collection. For example, there's farfalle, which we are supposed to believe means butterfly, but is clearly a bow tie in shape and coercive association. In addition, we have linguini, with its presumed tongue shape, and gnocchi, in the form of knees or kneecaps, which might not strictly be considered pasta on account of either its egg or potato content. The word gnocchi is derived from the Latin gnu, and the ancient Greek ganu, both meaning knee, that pivotal joint between the thigh and the lower leg. The missing link upon which the word for knee and the meaning of Genesis hinges is the Greek alpha contract verb genao, meaning to beget, in reference to a father, and to bear, give birth, in reference to a mother. The divergent meanings of this verb are attributed, according to the complementarity of both parents, out of the necessity to solve one of the great natural and social mysteries of human reproduction. Whenever a human child is born, one of the parents is identified by nature. For those of us less perceptive than others, God has deigned to connect the neonatal child for a time to the mother by means of a nutritive cord. The paternity question is not always so clear. A father might have been 3 sheets to the wind for the last 9 months, or even 6 feet under by the advent of the child. It seems, however, that our ancestors across the borders and social mores of ancient civilizations developed a system of claiming the paternity of a child by having the father receive the child on his knees, that is, by placing the child close to his generative organs. These organs came to be known by the diminutive Latin form of gnu, that is, genitals in English, and from Greek ganu, gonatos, to the English gonads. In modern hospitals, we mimic this ritual by letting the child's father cut the umbilical with clamps and specialized shears. Perhaps we today have lost something visceral and vital in the ventris. By ceremonially receiving his issue on his knees, the father claims his child. The pater becomes patent. He promises to the mother, to the child, and to the community to provide for the child and to be the child's protector. He becomes for that child and every subsequent child expendable. This was to our forefathers, and is now today, no little matter. It is the foundation of civilization, as fidelity to and for the filius formed the family, out of the lust and lasciviousness that left the libertine lonely, leant toward oblivion. With this deep etymology, the scope of the book of Genesis comes into frame. We can more acutely appreciate the import of genealogies, paternal blessings, infidelities, and dubious lineage in the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. On a very human level, the question of Genesis can be understood in sum by the question, who's your daddy? Just as with our first parents in the garden, our troubles begin when we forget the greatness of our Father and the loving mercy of his mighty embrace. The divine paternity, when extended to the entire human family, through the incarnation of the Son and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, turns the devil's taunt into the penitent's mantra. Remember, who's your daddy? The views expressed by BetterPears contributors are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of BetterPears, its parent company, or any company or organizations affiliated with the contributors. For more information to support BetterPears or to shop for BetterPears merchandise, please visit betterpears.com.